Okay, so we're going to take a look at a wonderful technology, a wonderful CSS technology called Flexbox. It was introduced into CSS back a few years, and it's really one of the best things that ever happened to CSS. I'll tell you this, Flexbox, it's hard in the beginning to learn. There are a lot of commands, there are a lot of CSS properties to learn. And some of them are confusing at the beginning because of their names, of their similarity. So don't be frustrated. In the beginning, Flexbox is difficult for everyone. We got like lots and lots of CSS properties um, with lots and lots of values. But eventually, with enough practice and enough simple layouts and enough reading and studying, you will be able to create almost all of the layouts that you see out there with Flexbox. I'll tell you this in from my personal experience. I use Flexbox and I create almost 9 out of 10 layouts that you see out there. And of course, I create new layouts using Flexbox, so it's pretty powerful. Um, you can work with CSS Grid. Personally, I use CSS Grid for just some very special cases, some very, let's say, advanced or more complex layouts. But that's just a small part of what's happening. Most of the times, Flexbox is able to deal with any kind of layout. You can also recreate things that you are able to create with CSS Grid with Flexbox, but it takes a little bit more, a few more commands. Both technologies are really powerful and both have their very special aspects and very special purposes. But Flexbox can be thought of like the tool that helps us recreate or create any layout we want. But it takes a little bit of effort in the beginning to learn about all the aspects and the properties and the rules. So make sure to learn and know Flexbox in depth, because this will be the tool that you will probably use on a day-to-day basis, and it will help you fix like create layouts or fix layouts or move things around with just the technologies that Flexbox provides. I'll tell you that the difference between working with CSS before Flexbox and CSS with Flexbox, it's like literally day and night. Working with CSS and trying to create all sorts of layouts like the ones you see on Facebook, on Twitter, on websites, was kind of like a really hard time. Um, Most of the times we have to hack, we have to find like tricks or hacks as they're called, to find our way out through these layouts and finally accomplish what the designer or the graphic artist wanted. And there was like a big problem with creating all these layouts. After Flexbox, things really started to look better and bright in CSS. So it's an amazing technology. If there's something that you shouldn't miss in CSS, it's definitely Flexbox. The Flexbox is just, as the name suggests, a flexible layout, which was created and introduced into CSS for creating user interfaces for creating layouts. So for putting the boxes that we all know, the HTML boxes, the elements around in a layout, in a structure that comes close to a design, a mock-up, or an idea we have for a user interface. The Flexbox is can be thought of as a parent container, as a box, as an element that is the parent of children elements. So always we start with one single element, HTML element, which becomes the Flexbox. You can think of it, or you will see that we talk about this parent element as the container, or as the Flexbox, or as the Flex container. And once we enable this box, this element as a Flexbox, all of its immediate children become flexible. They start behaving in ways that are different from how HTML elements work ordinarily. They start to shrink and to grow. They kind of become elastic, let's say flexible, and then enable us to create all sorts of layouts this way. So how does it work? So we have two main roles, two main protagonists in this play. First of all, as you can see here on the slides, we have this orange box. This is an element, of course, and this is the Flexbox. This is how we start working with Flexbox. We pick any element we want in our website, in our web page, and we say, okay, this is going to be the Flexbox, or the parent, or the Flex container. And once you have enabled Flexbox on this element, you immediately get a different behavior for the immediate children that are inside this Flexbox. Immediate children, so let's say we have a Flexbox, a div, we will see how enabled, and we have the immediate children. So there's a div, there's another div, there's another span. All these are the children of div because they come right after the div, and these immediately automatically become and behave as flex items. And inside these elements, we might have other elements that do not become flex items. So remember that this works only with the, okay, let me make this, we have Flexbox, let's make it like orange, and then only these elements become flex items and behave differently than ordinarily. Okay, all the other nested elements that are, let's say, grandchildren of the Flexbox, or grandchildren, or whatever, we can go as far as we want. Okay, not flex. Behave as ordinary span or block elements. Okay, nothing affects these elements, but the immediate children of the Flexbox start behaving in a different way, as you will see in a moment. So this is important. This is like the fundamentals of Flexbox. The way that we enable the Flexbox functionality, we activate, let's say, a Flexbox in an element in the orange box here, is by applying a display flex property to this element. This is just as easy as saying display flex on this, let's say, div. So let's go to the live sandbox. You have the live sandbox link on the notes, but you can also, and let me start creating some. We're not going to work with JavaScript today, So I'm going to do something really dirty here, and I just want you to ignore this, say that it never happened. I'm going to put the style inside the body, which is something that we never do. I'm just going to do this in order to be able to write my CSS without opening and closing the head or scrolling up. So for this presentation, I'm going to put the style right here, which works most of the times, but it's something that you should never do, okay? So I have a div and I have some elements. And let's give this div a class Flexbox. And let's, I will put some default, okay, body, font size. I will make this a little bit bigger. I will put some grayscale borders around all elements so that at the beginning we see some kind of borders so that we start to understand what's happening with this Flexbox. So I want you to carefully take a look at how this structure is laid out right now. So we have the body, which is this light shadow here, this light border here. It's just this container, let's say, box. Inside the body, we have this dark, let's say, border, which is the div with class Flexbox. And inside that, we have three block elements, three divs, the childs. So all these elements, the body, the div, and the three divs inside are block elements. So that's why they take the full width of the line and they take a new line each. So let's enable Flexbox on the parent div here to make the Flexbox a Flexbox container. So class Flexbox, no, I don't want that. You will see that suddenly the elements inside start behaving erratically, just like my CSS code editor here. No, they do not behave erratically, they just change their position. So once we enable Flexbox on the parent, even though I haven't touched the elements, these flex items now start behaving sort of like inline elements. Remember that inline elements are placed in line. They just take up enough space for in order for them to display their content, and they do not take up a new line. So at this point, the three child divs here start behaving like inline elements, but they are not. They're really more powerful than inline elements. But that's how we enable Flexbox on an element, and that's how immediately we get this sudden change in the layout. So display flex and let's make it, and suddenly this container becomes a Flexbox. So let's move on and see some of the other properties. Now, these are very important. We're going to go through a lot of details and a lot of concepts and a lot of terms. So just bear with me. In the beginning, Flexbox really has a lot of information. So these are very, very important aspects of the Flexbox theory. So every Flex container or Flexbox, okay, have two axes. They have this main axis that crosses through them in horizontally at this point, and we have this cross axis that crosses the Flexbox vertically. So this is like the system of coordinates that Flexbox uses, and according to these two axes, according to this system of coordinates, we lay out the flex items. So this is how we use, this is the system that we use in order to place the flex items according to any way we want. So for example, by having a system of coordinates like this, we can say, okay, I want you to center a thing like here. Okay, let's clear this color because it doesn't work. And so if we have two coordinates, we can have a flex item and pretty easily say, okay, I want you to center this flex item on the center of the main axis. This is currently the horizontal one. And I want you to center this item on the cross axis. So by having this system of coordinates, we're able to say, okay, move this element to the center, or move this element to the end of the main axis, or move this element to the end of the cross axis, or move this element to the start of the cross axis, or like this. So these two axes, the main and the cross axis, let us position the elements anywhere we want. So this is like a very important concept. Now, as you can see in this diagram, and you will later see another diagram that might be a little bit better than this, we have the size of each axis. So the flex container, the element has, let's say, 500 pixels width. The main axis has exactly the same size. So even though you have this arrow pointing towards the right of the screen, the size of the main axis is taking up just the space around the flex width. So this is this. Let me okay. So the main axis actually goes on until this point. Okay, this is like right here, to be more exact. And the cross axis just fits inside the element's height dimension. Of course, I've placed them right now just to in different positions, just to see the width and the height, or the size of these two axes. Okay, but you can think of it like this. And then we have the start point for each of these two. So we have the start point of the main axis, and we have the end, which is right here. You can see it says, and the main start. And we also have the start point for the cross axis and the end point. So we not only have a system of coordinates, but we also have these starting and end points where they can help us not only position elements, but also have in mind the direction of each axis. So we can say, since we have this start point, we can say, I want you to start positioning elements on the main axis, starting from the main start. So starting from here. So let me, okay. So start from here. It's a point of reference which we can use and give instructions to the to CSS. So we can also use the cross endpoint and say, okay, I want you to start laying out these elements from the end of the cross axis. So these start and end points of the two axes become points of reference, and we can use them to get the layout that we want, like aligning the items from the start, from the end, and so forth. I'm going to move to another schematic that it describes exactly the same thing with maybe different, like a different diagram. I think it's nice to see these concepts in two different ways. This is has the main size of the main axis, the cross size, the flex container, this gray box, the flex items. It's pretty much the same, just a different, let's say, view. So let's start looking first at the at some CSS properties for the Flexbox, for the container, for the parent element. With Flexbox, we have two main categories of properties. We have categories that relate to the parent. So we have, let's say, I will make this also items, and I will give them some styling. So padding, background color, let's say, I don't know, gray, something like that. Okay. So we have some CSS properties that are related to the parent. So we have parent CSS properties. There are some properties that you have to learn and relate to and affect the parent CSS, the div with class Flexbox at this in this case. And we have child or the CSS properties that affect the flex items. So we have two main categories. And we have to distinguish between these two categories. So one of the, let's say, challenging things at first with Flexbox is we have to remember certain CSS properties that belong to the children, that affect the children, the flex items, and have no effect on the parent, and some CSS properties that belong or affect the parent. So keep this in mind, these two, let's say, very basic categories of Flexbox CSS properties. And we're going to start seeing some of the parent properties right now. So we have the display flex that we saw. And this means that an element with display flex starts behaving as a Flexbox container, and automatically its items become acting as flexible items, as flex items. There are two properties that we can use, mainly flex and inline flex. Now, the flex means that when we have an element, like a block element like this, it keeps behaving as a block element, taking up the full width of the containing element and also a new line. And it starts behaving as a Flexbox parent. Whereas inline flex means that the element, the parent element, it behaves as an inline block element and so stays on the same line and takes up just as much width as it needs for the content to be displayed. And it behaves like an inline or inline block element, but with Flexbox capabilities. The children of this element will become flex items. Let me create a let's name this section. So oops, what happened here? Let's have a class Flexbox inline Flexbox, and yes, inline Flexbox, and let me give some items here. Okay, so let's start now. I'm trying to think. Okay, background, indigo. Let us see. Okay, so we have a section here, and let's make this inline flexbox display inline flex. So what you see here is a section, a block element, a section element, which has this indigo color. You can see this is like sits on the back. And we have this inline flexbox div, which starts behaving as a flex parent with the inline flex, but it doesn't take up the whole area. So it behaves as an inline element, it stays in line, and it just takes up enough space to display its content. So this is just the space of this inline flex item. If I switch to flex, so if I switch to display flex, okay, I need to give it a background. So let me give a background of red. Okay, so let's comment this. Okay, now it's much better. So we have a div element, a block element, which is the indigo thing. And we have an inline flex element right here. So this behaves as a flex container. It has two children, and it will have this the effects of a flex box inside this box. But it doesn't take up, this inline flex box doesn't take up the whole line. So it behaves like an inline element. It stays right here. But if I change this to flex, this will become a block element with flex capabilities. So it will start spanning the full width of the container element here. So if I switch to display flex, let me go here. You will see that if I refresh, it takes up the whole width. So now the inline flex box is this red box that takes up the full width of the containing element, of the container element, and the flex children still become flexible. They still behave like inline elements. They stick to the left of the main axis. Okay, just to remind you, we have the main axis here. So the main, and we have the cross axis. So just to main and cross. And the flex items, as you see, they become like flexible, and they just stick to the left side of the main axis. This is the start of the main axis, and this is the end. And start of the cross axis, and and end of the cross axis. So always keep in mind this system of coordinates, the start and end points and the two axes. So this is the difference between inline flex and flex. It's like the difference of a display block and the display inline block, but these two elements, or the elements that have these two properties, have special capabilities regarding their inner elements, the children, the items. So now in the slides, I will just be quickly looking at some of the interactive demos. There is this amazing demo that I'm using, which contains almost all of the Flexbox properties, and it enables you to Okay, display. So you have a very basic layout with some description that you should read after the session, and you can play around with different property values and you see the result. So we have the parent element, which is this dotted bordered element, and it has a display block. When we switch to flex, it starts behaving as a flex box and the elements inside start behaving as flex items. And we can also set the inline flex, and we can see that this parent element now behaves as an inline element. So there was some element on the same line, then comes the flex box parent, which remains inline, but the elements inside start behaving as flex items. So you can play around through this interactive demo. Now, let's go to another property, the flex direction. So remember that we have, when we enable the display flex on a parent element, the elements that items started they were aligned here at the left of the main axis. And starting from the start of the main axis, they go one by one to the right. So let me place some numbers here to make this. So we have the first element on the right, on the left, then the second element, and so forth. So at this point, by default, the direction of the elements inside a flexbox point to the are laid out according to the main axis, starting from the start to the end, from the left to the right. So the default direction and the default, let's say, orientation of the elements in a flexbox are right here, from left to right. So this is like the default. We can make these elements have a direction from the end to the start. So we can switch the direction. Okay, let me wait for Zoom. So we can switch the direction. So let me do that. I will go, let me put this here. Okay, and if I change the flex direction, which by default is low, so by default we have left to right horizontally. Okay, so nothing happens because this is the default value. If we don't put flex direction with another value or even with row, CSS will just use this direction. If we want to switch from the right to the left, from the end to the start of the main axis, don't think about left or right. You'll see why in a bit. Think of start and end. We might want to change the flex direction to row reverse. Let's see if this updates. So we have horizontally and to start, and also let me start to end. So there's a question about whether Flexbox is one-dimensional or two-dimensional. Flexbox is one-dimensional. It works on this row or in a column, as you will see later. So it's a one-dimensional layout system. It works by aligning items in a, let's say, one-dimensional space. We can also switch the direction and make it, let me put this, okay, make it like this. Come and zoom. So start to end, and end to start. Okay, so we can also switch this direction, this orientation, from this horizontal, let's say, layout to a vertical alignment. But remember that the two axes, let me go back. Okay, let me annotate. So what will happen if I change the direction of the elements? So let me do some CSS tricks here to showcase the. So we have this image. Let me. Okay, we're going to. Okay, when we're switching the direction of the Flexbox from a horizontal orientation to a vertical orientation, and we will see that in a bit, the elements start flowing from top to bottom. But what we're actually going to do is rotate this system of coordinates. So what we're going to do with the flex direction in a bit is this thing. So when we change the direction from row to column, okay, so this is flex direction row, as items flow as in a row from like left to right, from start to end in a horizontal manner. When we switch the direction to a column, this is what happens in the system of coordinates. And this is very important for you to remember. We can rotate the system of coordinates in Flexbox and be able to lay our elements from top to bottom or in reverse, but the two axes also rotate along this direction. So think about this rotation, okay? The main axis will become vertical and the cross axis will become horizontal. So we have this transformation that's about to happen, and that happens when we change the flex direction to column. So okay. So now, as you can see, the direction is from start to end. The color is not the best. So we switch the direction to to column. So meaning we have like a vertical main axis right now, and this is still the main axis that has been rotated, let's say 900 degrees. And now the items follow this vertical axis. They are aligned through this main axis. So yes, the cross axis is reversed also. Now the cross axis lives here. So, okay, this is the cross axis. So this means that anything that affects the main and the cross axis, or anything that's related to the cross and the main axis, like the alignment, for example, is also reversed. So if we have like, let's say an element, a flexbox with main and we have main and cross. And let's say I want to center an element right here. I will say move to the start of the main axis and to the center of the cross axis. So according to the center of the cross axis and start of the main axis. So if I want to use the system of coordinates and I want to position an element right here, I must take in consideration that the main axis is here. So I can say go to the start, so move this to the left, and then on the vertical axis, which is the cross axis right now, I will say, okay, put it to the center of the cross axis. So I'm using this system of coordinates. But if this gets into if we get from row to column, we're going to have this system. So we're going to have the main here, okay, and we're going to have the cross here. So the points of reference change. So we have the start of the cross axis now, right? And the center of the main axis. So remember, we have a 90 degrees rotation. Everything rotates like to the right, like 90 degrees. And we have now this two coordinate system, this coordinate system that has been rotated. And when we want, if we want to position an element right here, we're going to use the start point of the cross axis and the center of the main axis to put it around the vertical center. Yes, you mean yes, Sophia. Okay, yes. So it's not reversed. Yes, you are right. It's rotated. Yes, my bad. I had rotate in my mind. So it rotates 90 degrees, and the axis too. So this is something very important that we must keep in mind whenever we switch the flex direction from row to column. So the two axes rotate together, and along with them the start and end points. And we must think, like, let's say, in two different ways. We must keep in mind, if we switch to the row orientation, we must think in main and cross axis and act accordingly. But if we switch if we rotate the thing, the Flexbox, and we use flex direction column, we must switch, let's say, a little bit the way that we think and the image that we have about the axis in a different way. So we must do this context switching when we flip, let's say, or not when we flip, when we rotate the direction with flex direction. See, this is something a little bit tricky in the beginning because we keep these two axes in our minds, but we forget to rotate them mentally. And there's also flex direction column reverse, which, as you can guess, it's vertical and to start. Let's see. So we have, as you can see here, a reverse order of elements. The first element comes last on the main axis, the second element, okay, in the middle, and the third element here, the child tree, it's on the top. So we directed the elements from the bottom of the Flexbox, let's say, to the top of the box. So row reverse, column, think of this rotation, not reverse rotation, and then with reverse also we reverse the direction in this orientation. Depending on what layout you want to build, you might stick to one or the other, of course. So I'm going to switch back to flex direction row and take a look at some. Okay. So let's move on. You can always raise your hand back to flex direction. So we have these 4 different flex direction values. You can also use the interactive demo to just play around and see a quick overview. Now let's move on to flex wrap. So by default, Flexbox Flexbox is a one-dimensional container, meaning that it works on a single line. That's not the color. So it's like let's say an element, and we can lay out elements like on the horizontal axis or on the vertical axis, but it's like one-dimensional. It's like a line. Let's say that we align items inside this line. Now, when on this line, on this single line, we have elements that take up too much space and they cannot fit in this single line, we have this property called flex wrap, which automatically places the items that cannot fit inside this limited, let's say, area in the next on the space below the first line. So we're still talking about a one-dimensional system, but the items that do not fit on, let's say, this line, they go to the next automatically. This is a behavior of Flexbox called flex wrap. So let's create an example. I will switch to row. No. Flex direction row. Did I say? Yeah. Okay. And I will put some elements. Let's put some more elements, 4 and 5. And I will make these elements, these items, let's say, I don't know, 300 pixels. 300 pixels width. Okay. Now, what happens here? I said that each item should be 300 pixels wide. Now, this shouldn't work like this. I mean, it doesn't look like we have 300 pixels by 5 because it's just too small. So Flexbox squeezes the elements together. So let me show you like this. Let's make this clear. So if you see, even though I have placed a width, I have given a width of 300 pixels on each child, the width is 150 pixels. Why? Because Flexbox, which you can see here on the Chrome developers tools, we have this really nice addition where we can see the axis. We can see these directions. You can see flex direction row, and we can change to where is it? Okay, flex direction row. Okay, we can change them from this. So by default, Flexbox doesn't give, doesn't let the children run wild. It doesn't let the children take up 300 pixels. It squeezes them in order to fit on this one-dimensional, on this one line, on this container. If we want to enable the wrap behavior. So in order for the children to have 300 pixel width and then create another line on the bottom and put the ones that don't fit on the same line, we need to go to the parent. We're still talking about Flexbox parent properties, and say flex wrap. Now let's refresh. And what is happening? Let me. Okay. So when we put flex wrap, we give the instruction to the Flexbox, to the parent. Okay, if the elements inside you don't really fit because they're larger, let's say, than the overall width, then put the ones that do not fit on the same line below. So as you can see, we have 300 pixels here. And let's see how big the Flexbox is. So the Flexbox is 755 pixels. So we only have space for 2 children of 300 pixel each. So we have 600 pixels here, and we cannot fit another 300 pixel element here. So automatically Flexbox, given the instruction to wrap, puts the child 3 and child 4 on the line below. And of course, we still don't have enough space for the fifth element, so it pushes it on the bottom. And still this, where is it? This is, let me put a color. So we still have this Flexbox container. It's still one-dimensional. You can think of it as one-dimensional, which has this special ability to wrap the elements and display them as they are on a two-dimensional, let's say, layout. So we have like elements on the horizontal axis and on the vertical. But by let's say its definition, the Flexbox is in one-dimensional. We still have one line. You can think of it as one big, let's say, horizontal line that has this special property to display things on the next line. But we cannot say that this is a two-dimensional entity and two-dimensional structure. It's actually a special, let's say, effect of the Flexbox. If we really want to talk about two-dimensional structures that have really rows and columns at the same time, we're going to be talking about CSS grid. But Flexbox is thought to be a one-dimensional structure and layout system. But we get this nice effect of moving these items on the next line if they don't fit. Now, if we switch from a hard-coded value, like 300 pixels here, to a relative value, like let's make it 25%. Okay, 25%. Let's see. I think we need to answer now. Let me see if we can get, yes. So let's switch. I'm trying to fit 4 elements, 4 flex items on each line. So instead of giving them an absolute value like 300 pixels, because I don't know what is the width of the Flexbox, because it might be like 700 pixels, it might be 1000 pixels. So this adapts to the screen, so I don't know if I'm going to deal with 1000 pixels. So to have 4 items on a row, give them 250 pixels. I instead use relative values to fit 4 elements in a single line. But as you can see, this doesn't work because to answer Gogi's question, the box sizing inside of Flex does not automatically switch to border box. So the border of this element, of these elements, of these children, add up to their width. So instead of 25%, right now we have, we're going to have to see, this is like the, let's say the real, the 25% width, but we have padding and border adding up to the width. So since we have 10 pixel padding to the left, to the right, to the top and to the bottom, and also some border, we are going to have 25% plus the border plus the padding. So this means that we get past the 25% limit, and they don't get to fit on the same line, 4 of them. Okay, since the wildcard selector affects all elements, it will affect also the children. So, okay, let me, okay, okay, it worked. So the wildcard affects all elements, so it will affect the children. So this asterisk means take all the elements and apply this box sizing. So if we had this on top, we would have box sizing border box. So either way, either to apply it on all of the elements or right here, what's happening? Let me box something. Okay. Border box. Okay, something is happening with code sandbox. Let me refresh. Box sizing border box. Okay, now it works. Please stay this way. So if we apply box sizing border box to all the elements, this means that the padding and the border that we add on the elements, on all of the elements, does not add up to the width or height. So we have 25% or 200 pixel, that's the width or the height. The border and the padding do not add up to the width or the height. So when we set the width and the height along with box sizing border box, we have very specific dimensions, 200 pixels, 200 pixels. If we don't put this here, or just specifically on these elements, we're going to have 200 pixels width plus 10 pixels border, or plus 5 pixels padding. And that's very hard for us to calculate the width and the height, because we apply a value like 200 pixels width, but we have to calculate in our mind, or even go to the inspector and say, okay, plus 10 pixels padding, minus 5 pixel border, I don't know. So it's kind of gets complicated. So that's why we use the box sizing border box. So right now, with this just neat trick, with just display flex wrap, and a width of a relative value, we can create a very basic grid and stack our elements, our boxes, in any way we like 4 items on a row, or 3 items on a row, or 2 items on a row, like 50%. So playing around with these relative values, we can create some any grid we want. I mean visual grid, not CSS grid, any grid we want, just by these 3 properties. So I have 6 children. So these are posts, these are, I don't know, images, these are whatever we want. So if I have a menu in a restaurant and I want to have like the dishes laid out like this, 3 per line, and on a next line, the next 3, I would give them like 33.33%. If I wanted like a 2 elements per row, I would use 50%. If I wanted like 5, I would put 20% and so forth. So this gives us, with just very few CSS properties, the ability to create some neat layout. That's what we were seeing before. Let me put some really large text in here. We will have this effect. So Flexbox will try to squeeze the elements to fit on a single row, but we'll get this very ugly effect. So it will not wrap, it will stay on the same row, and it will squeeze the content like this. So there's no automatic wrapping. We need to say flex wrap in order for this to go on the next line. You mean we don't want the text to wrap? Okay. Okay. That's a good question. So let's go here. Text. What was it? Wrap. I always forget the wrap. Okay, there is a property which I forget, and let's see. We have the no wrap. So if I want the text not to wrap, but you will see that it's getting like this. I have to use another. This is not a Flexbox property, okay? This is a CSS property. This is older than Flexbox. It works on every element. So if I don't want the text to have a wrapping, I will put this one. But as you can see, we have this ugly effect. I don't know if we want this. But as you can see, Flex Wrap is really needed here. Now, let's remove this big ugly text. So whenever you see some kind of grid, like, I don't know, photographs or posts, or let's see if we can find, let's say, let's go to a website. So whenever you see a grid, like boxes, like this one, so this, okay, thank you Al Jazeera, and thank you Zoom. Okay, if you see a grid like this, I mean a visual grid, you have a Flexbox with display grid. So we have wrap, Flexbox, flex wrap. We have Flexbox. Okay, let's wait for Zoom. We have a Flexbox, and we have, each row has a box, an item of 25%. So we have a width for the items, 25%. And with just, and we need, of course, we might not need here, but we might want to use box sizing. But with display flex wrap, and the width of the items to 25%, we get this really nice layout with just 3 commands. If you try to make this without Flexbox, you will understand why we opened some panes when Flexbox came out. So this is a grid, and it can be easily created with this. And of course, we can use Flexbox inside Flexbox. So we can have this Flexbox, right, which contains other Flexboxes. Okay, this can be a flex item, which itself is also a Flexbox. So we're just scratching the surface here, but you can see that Flexbox is pretty powerful. All of these can be created with Flexbox. Let's give another example. So we have Flex. And we have like 2 items. And we have, of course, wrap. And we have the first item would be like, let's say 75%. And the second one, okay, this one will have a different class, will be 25%. Okay, so come on here. So a box, display flex, flex wrap, 2 relative widths for, let's say, the text element and the image element, and we have this nice layout. So pretty powerful. Let's check what they are using. So let's go here. Okay, let's check. So we have, no, this is it. They're using grid, okay. But they're using grid for this, but here they use flex, okay. But these boxes are flex, so they use a combination of grid for this layout and flex for these two, which is really nice that you see this on the dev tools. Let's go to this one. For this one it's flex, and this one flex, but there's no container. Okay, they just put 2 block elements one after the other, which just are Flexbox parent for these 2 children. Let's go to, I don't know, another website and see if we can spot some. Okay, we have a grid. I mean, we have a visual grid. Let's see something a little bit maybe an easy to spot. Okay, let's see this. These 4 blocks. Let's see what they're using. So the container is the container. So they're using a flex here. So this container is flex with 4 flex items. So the container, come on, has display flex, flex direction row. So they're horizontal. They don't use flex wrap because they don't want elements on the next line, so they use just flex wrap, no wrap, which is the opposite of wrap. Please don't put elements that don't fit on the same line on the next line, so that's the other value. And this will have somewhere with 25%. So 25%, 25, 25, 25, and we get this layout. So this is Flex Wrap. I think it's time to take a break. So we have these properties. Just to quickly, we have no wrap, which is the default value. If we don't put Flex Wrap, you will have this squeezing effect. This means that we have the value no wrap to the Flex Wrap. If we switch to the wrap value, we're going to put the elements that don't fit, their size doesn't fit on the same line, on the following line. And wrap reverse will reverse the order of the elements that are wrapped. Let's see the demo for this. Let's see if I Okay, I will show you first the interactive demo. So we have no wrap, and the way that we do this is that we on one of the elements on all of the children we put a width 40% so that they don't fit all on the same line. So with wrap we get the two elements on the bottom because we have 40 and 40%, that's 80%, and plus 40% doesn't give us 100%, so they get on the next line. And if I put wrap reverse, so see we have right now 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I put wrap reverse, it's going to reverse the order of the elements, I mean their appearance. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 moving like from the end of the axis to the to the start. So wrap reverse, and that's this trick, like using wrap or wrap reverse, can be used to very easily display some content in ascending or descending order. So if we have, let's say, the top 10 movies, we can have like the top one movie, second, and so forth, or maybe the movie that came out in 2010, 2021. So if we have like this dating, this ordering based on the date or on the grade or the rating or whatever, just by placing a simple flex wrap property, we can reverse the order and display things in a descending order. So without using any JavaScript, you can have a button, let's say, that switches from flex wrap to wrap reverse, and the users can see a list of elements either in descending or ascending order. This is like really practical and really useful because we don't have to resort to JavaScript for this kind of things. So the reverse properties are really, really useful in Flexbox. Okay, the flex flow, I'm going to skip this because I don't want extra unnecessary information at this point. This is just a shorthand for both flex direction and flex wrap. So we saw flex direction, row, column, row reverse. We saw flex wrap, which is wrap, no wrap, wrap reverse. We can combine these two in a single shorthand, but for now, we suggest that you skip the shorthands to have less things in memory. Shorthands don't add up anything. They don't give us extra functionality apart from just writing on a single line what would be two lines. But in the beginning, when learning Flexbox, I would suggest that you disregard the shorthands so that you have less things to worry about. Everything can work with simple CSS Flexbox properties. And if at some point you feel comfortable with these properties, you can then jump into the shorthands and say, okay, I'm going to write two CSS properties, two Flexbox CSS properties in a single line. So just disregard them from now. So let's go to the justify content. So remember that we have these two axes. And if this is a box, so if we think of this as a flex box, as a parent with these orange items, we have this main axis. When the flex direction is row, okay? Remember, this is flex direction row. For flex direction column, we are switching or we are rotating. Okay, like this, vertical. Okay, the main axis will switch orientation according to whether we're using flex direction row, horizontal, or column. So if we want to justify the content, to align the content based on this on the main axis, we use a property called justify content. So on the main axis, we can justify the elements, the flex items, either on the flex start of the axis. So this is the main axis, this is the start, and this is the end. Flex start, it's called, but we also find it like start and end. So if we want to justify the elements to the left side, to the start of the main axis, we just use justify content with the flex start value, or we can just omit it because this is the default value. So justify content flex start, and this is the property that we're going to use to give to the okay, let me see if I can move this. Okay, thank you, Zoom. So this is the default setting. That's why we saw all the items squeezed, let's say, to the left of to the start of the main axis. We can use the value flex end to justify them on the right side without switching their order. Okay, this is not like row reverse. This is just pushing them to the end of the main axis. So we would have withdraw. Okay, so if we have element 1, 2, 3, we're going to have element 1, 2, 3. So it's just either sticking these 3 elements to the flex start or to the flex end. Whereas with row reverse, we see that we reverse the order. It was 3, 2, 1. So that's a completely different way of thinking. So, excuse me, justify content also on the main axis, on the end. We have the center. So right here, we grab all the items and we center them around the center of the main axis. With the space between, we just take the remaining space, which is this and maybe this. Okay, the elements take up as much space as they need, but there's some free space around, right? So there's free space. So with space between, Flexbox or the browser, let's say, takes this free space and divides it between the elements in an equal, of course, amount. So if we have like 100 pixels of free space, we have 50 pixels here and 50 pixels between the elements. If we had more elements, of course, we would see something like this. Take 100 pixels and give 25 pixels here, let's say, and here, and here. No, it's not, sorry, it's 33. Okay, if we had like 100. So equally distribute the space between the elements. As you can see, there are no spaces here at the edges. It's just between the elements. Space around will take the available free space and put it. Now this. So let's say we have some free space. We get an amount and we put it like here. Let's say this is X, and then we put the same amount here on the right side of the element. So around the elements, and then we also put the same amount here on the left and on the right of this element, and then also the same amount here on the left and on the right. So we distribute the free space equally to the left and to the right side of each item, which makes this, let's say, inner space larger than the edges. So as you can see, we have, let's say, 10 pixels, or X, we're going to have 2X space here, 2x here and x here. So 10, 20, 20, 20. So excuse me, at some points this might be what we're looking for, but if we want to have a more, let's say, visually pleasing result, we might want to have the same space here, 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 and here. And this is where space evenly comes in and evenly distributes the free space between, not only between the items, but also on the edges. So at this point, we're going to have X space here, X space here, X space here, and exactly the same space here. So it's evenly distributed, and we have like a result that looks, I don't know, a little bit better than space around. But this, of course, depends on what layout you're trying to create and what kind of design you got. So let's play around with this justify content values. To do this, I'm going to switch back to flex wrap, no wrap. So I'm not going to wrap the children. And I'm going to also comment out the width because in order to see the results of justify content, flex row, okay. We have, okay, I have to comment some, to make some space so that okay, so I'm making some free space. That's why I removed some elements, because in order to see the justify content work on the main axis, we have to have at least some free space. So this is where we have justify content with flex start. On the main axis, which right now is horizontal, we haven't rotated, the items stick, align, justify, let's say, to the start of the main axis. This is the same as if I have written justify content flex start. So the same thing, the same result, nothing happens because this is the default value. But we can use other values like flex end. Come on, sandbox, you can do it. As you can see, 1, 2, 3. We're not getting the reverse order, which we would get if we flip the row order of the elements. So the row reverse would say child 3 to 1, but the justify is just about taking the boxes as they are and pushing them to the end of the main axis. So this is the flex, the justify content flex start. We have the center, which is pretty neat. Right here, a centered menu. This is really nice. Or maybe some controls. If we have some kind of video, we can have the play, the pause, and I don't know, stop or something like that. So if we have controls like this, we can have very quickly center the control buttons with justify content. And we have, of course, all the other, let's use space evenly. You're going to play around with the rest of the justifying content values. And this is also another case. Now, let me add some height to the Flexbox. So let's see if we can get something like this. What happened? Okay, 200 pixels. Okay, I'm just now adding some extra height to to the Flexbox in order to see how we can also justify or align, as it's called in Flexbox, align items on the vertical axis. So right now, remember, we're flex direction row, and we have main axis here. All right, we have main axis here and cross axis here with flex direction column. This is going to be rotated, but right now we're using this. So main, let me write it here. So this is important to remember. So justify content works on the main axis. Okay, remember this is we will use justify content to align items on the main axis. Let's move on to the next. We have these values. You can see some more details on the slides. You can see the justify is on the main axis. And let's move on to the other axis, the cross axis. So align items still on the flex parent. We're dealing with the Flexbox, the main element, and we're changing some CSS properties that affect its children, but we're still defining and declaring and using and applying these properties on the Flexbox, on the parent. I haven't gone into the item yet. As you can see, I'm applying all this flex direction, the flex wrap, the justify content on the parent. So we still have this flex parent, and these are the flex items or children. Remember, we have to distinguish between CSS properties that apply to the Flexbox, to the parent, or to the children. Now, align items, as you can see from this nice schematic, they let us align, place, let's say, items according to the cross axis. So we have the cross axis, and we can align the items according to this. So we have flex start, which, as you can see, so we have a start here, right, and end, the end here. So flex start moves the items to the start point of the axis, like on this case, the start point is here. Flex end aligns them, makes the items stick to the end of the cross axis. The center centers them like this on the vertical at this point. The stretch, which is the default value, will make the items stretch from one point, one edge from the start up to the end. So this is the default, as you remember from our example. And we have the baseline, which aligns item based on the baseline of the first line of text. So if we have text on these 4 boxes, for example, we have a baseline. We have a line that goes through like the bottom of the fonts of the text on these lines. So and depending on the font size, we might have different layout or look, let's say. But if we use the align items baseline, it will create a line like this, and it will place all the boxes, all the items, according to the baseline of each text. This is something that we rarely see out there, but it's useful. And also it's a little bit more, let's say, complicated than the other align item values. So let's see the align items in practice. So by default, we have the cross axis here. We have start, we have end. Okay, and this is the cross axis. So as you can see, the align items works by default with the value stretch. It takes these items, the play, the pause, the stop, and it stretches them from the start to the end. That's why I have put the height 200 pixels to see this stretching effect. So the default value, align items, works on the cross axis. Okay, let me see. Command sandbox. Okay, align items again works on the cross axis. So by default, we have align items stretch. Nothing will happen now because we have the default value. Putting the okay. Okay, yes. So align items stretch and align items center. Let's see something different. So you can see that right now we are positioning the elements based on the cross axis on the center of this axis right here, which is pretty neat. Okay, I'm going to, so you can see the code sandbox, but I'm not going to waste any more time on the bugs of code sandbox. Sorry for that. Let's hope that it works okay. There's a question, when we change from direction row to column, what happens to those properties? So that's an excellent question. So let's do that. And I will use the stretch for the align items. So let's, so I will draw, right now we have the main axis here, and we have justify content space evenly. So on the main axis, we use the justify content, always justify content works with the main axis. So we have this evenly distributed space, right? And on the cross axis, we have a stretch right now. So if I move from a flex direction row to flex direction column, all this will rotate 90 degrees. So we will go to the main axis here and the cross axis here. This means that this property, this evenly, will work now on this axis, right? Everything will rotate. The justify content will rotate along with the axis, and of course the stretch. So, okay, the stretch, I don't know how to, okay, let's say the stretch right here. So all this will rotate 90 degrees along with the properties and the items, as you can see. So everything will rotate accordingly. So let's do just that and go here and say flex direction column. Now, we have the main axis here right now. And in order to see the justify content space evenly, I'm going to add more height. So let's see. So as you can see, we now have the main axis here rotated, right? And the justify content, the space evenly, was also rotated. So right now, this feature, this property, creates the space between the elements, but on a vertical axis. So everything rotates. So the main axis here and the cross axis, which has align items stretch, also stretches the elements now on a horizontal axis. So this is the stretch. So you must keep in mind, you must like rotate this mental coordinate system in your mind whenever you switch from the default flex direction row to column. All this coordinate system rotates 190% along with everything that happens and affects the children. This happens for a reason. It's a little bit difficult and very confusing in the beginning. We think that we expect the same result when we turn to flex direction column, but that's not the case. We have to rotate the coordinate systems in our heads and then switch from thinking of justify content as working on horizontally to working vertically. So everything right now switched, which means that if I change the align items from stretch to center, you can see that they are centered right now on the horizontal, according to the horizontal center here of the cross axis. But this is horizontal, okay? They kind of flow like a column, but they're here. So this is one of the like challenging parts of Flexbox. In the beginning, at least, you have to keep reminding yourselves, now I'm rotating the coordinate system. Everything will rotate. So we pick, first we pick the direction. How do we want the elements to be laid out? Horizontally or vertically, as a row or as a column. And then we start thinking how these properties really work. So I know this is a little bit confusing in the beginning, but trust me, in the end, you will just become accustomed to it and you will never think about these things. They will come like almost naturally with practice and lots and lots of flex layouts. Now, let me see. So line items. So we have a line content. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Let's see one last parent property, and then I will guide you to some really good resources. Now, the align content works on the whole. Let's say, let me use a color here. Works on all of the lines that are created using FlexWrap. So in here, we see 3 lines. Now, remember that a Flexbox container is a one-dimensional container. It's a one-dimensional structure. We are laying out things in one dimension, even though we can see elements on, let's say, like 2-dimension or on 2 or 3 levels. But here we have a wrap, flex wrap applied. So elements that do not fit on one line go to the next. Now, we have like the individual lines, which I would just say like lines. And then all of these lines together form the content. So if we group all the lines, all the individual lines that are created using FlexWrap, we can think of this as the content. Okay, so there are two ways to think of and also behave differently. Every single line has its own, let's say, properties and own behavior, but all of them together as a group, and we name this the content, can act and be aligned together as a big box. So if we want all these lines that are created by FlexWrap to be thought of as a single element, as a single group, as a single block, and we can align them on the cross axis. Align always goes with cross axis. This prefix, like align items, align content, whenever you see align, think of the cross axis. So if we take these three lines as a group, not as a single line, and we want to align them inside the Flexbox, the parent, the container, we use the align content and we move this whole box like this, and we set inside the content the alignment of its individual individual lines. So with align content, we are able to place these different properties and have this different visual effect. So we have center, we have stretch, space between, space around, a little bit close to align items. Now let me clear. We will see an example that I think will clear these things. So we have pretty much the same values as align items. Now let's see, because you definitely have a question and wondering right now, okay, what's exactly the difference between aligned items and aligned content? So let me give you an interactive demo. Okay, so we have this flex container. This is the yellow thing. Anyway, and we have flex items inside from 1 to 8. Okay, this is just the structure. So the flex container has like this background, this height, it's 700 pixels height. It has display flex. It has flex wrap, so elements that do not fit on the same line, like 6, 7, 8, or even more, they flip over to the next line. So we have this flex wrap that, as you can see, makes the element be placed on the next line. We have justified content on the main axis, so that's why we see this space around them. Okay, this is the space around. And we have align items stretch. So align items stretch makes, let's say, let's pick a color. So make the item stretch on their individual lines, like, okay. And I'm going to change some, I'm going to disable some classes here so that we have the same height. So I given some different a different height to some of the elements. So I'm just going to give the same height. So let me just So we have align items stretch, which works on a per line, let's say, basis. So take the first line, take the second line, and stretch them. So a line always goes with the cross axis. So you can think of, let's say, like two mini cross axes, and the elements stretch across these two axes on each line. So we have align items that works on the items, whereas align content works on the content, on the whole group of the lines. So let me switch now from align items stretch to align items center to see what will happen now. So as you can see, align items now works on a per line basis. We align the items of line 1 on this mini, let's say, cross axis, on the cross axis of the first line. So this is the center. So this is it, and also this is it. Okay, so on each line we have like a mini cross axis, and the items are aligned according to this individual, let's say, line small cross axis, and it's according to the value, of course. Stretch, take the whole height of the cross axis of this mini cross axis, or center, like here. Now, if I switch to the content, you will see that now it works in a group of lines, of items. So the stretch content center takes the content, which is this box, okay, and it centers it to the center of the cross axis in the whole of the Flexbox. So it works on the group, on a group of lines. So this works on this body here, like the group of the lines. So align items works on a per line basis, and we get to see this distinction, and we make this distinction, and we work with these two when we have flex wrap applied and we get new lines of items. So that's the case where we have to kind of think or use one of these two align properties. So let me clear this. The question is, if we apply align content on a one-liner, will it be the same as align items? Let's do that. So I will just switch from flex wrap to no wrap. So let's apply. So let's see. So we have a line content stretch right here. Let me see, I have okay, so we have a line content stretch, and if I comment this and I press align center, we have like the same result, because we don't have like a extra lines. So okay, let me okay, this works. Okay, so it's like I don't think we need to concern ourselves with just with aligned content when we have when we have a single line, when we don't have like flex wrap. So let me also this is the default, the stretch. the align content center, I think now. So we have align content stretch. So sorry, align item stretch, which is the default. And then we have align content, which centers the content. Now, since stretch is like stretching the items across the cross-axis, we just don't see the centering. They stretch over the whole cross-axis. So there's not much to see about align content here. What else can we play around? Let's see. So yes, I'm not sure of any other example with a single line. We don't get like any visual change. So let me also. So we have stretch here. Let me just put this back. Okay, let's see if okay. Let's see if the interactive demo gives us a little bit more hints. So align content, we have flex start. So all the lines are grouped together, as you can see, and they are placed on the flex on the start of the cross axis. The flex end puts them on the end of the cross axis, but the group of lines, as you can see, the center puts them all on the center. The space between adds space between these lines, space around, space evenly, and stretch. So we have these properties. For Flexbox to really start making sense, you have to start building lots and lots of layouts. So for this session, we've gone through the parent CSS properties. So all these align items, align content, flex direction were part of the Flexbox parent, the element that contains the flex item. In the next session, we will meet the CSS Flexbox properties for the children, the elements that are inside the Flexbox, like these divs with class item. So we covered much of the Flexbox parent properties, and next time we will see the children properties, which we apply them on the either all of the items or even on some individual children. Now for this session, I have created a code pen where I tried to recreate the Google Meet layout. So in Google Meet, we have this layout where we have like these 4 persons per row with microphone here and the first name and the last name, and there's also a like this bar here on the box of the person who's actually talking. So I recreated something close to the Google Meet layout. So I will just walk you through. We have the body, which by default, as you remember, takes the height of the content that it has to display. So if we have a content that takes up, let's say, 100 pixels height, the body will stretch out 100 pixel size. So in order to have a full height interface, a full height screen, I'm giving the body a height of 100 V8, viewport height. Okay, so V8, it's viewport height. I'm doing this because I want the body by default to stretch all the way to the visible viewport. I don't want it just to stretch according to the content. I want always the interface to have 100 viewport height. So this is with the body. Next, I have a section which contains all these divs. These are the boxes with the persons and the microphones and stuff like that, you will see that they are empty, and I'm using CSS to create all the content. So the images and all these. So these are empty divs. So which is kind of strange, but this is the power of CSS. So I'm creating a display flex for this section, for this flex container. I'm using flex wrap because I want the like the fifth person that doesn't fit right here to switch to the next line. So I have to use flex wrap in order not to see all the faces stretched like this. Okay, this is nice. Anyway, I'm using justify content to come on, code pen. Okay, I'm using justify content to align, to justify the contents according to the main axis, which is horizontal, so that we see these two persons on the bottom on the center. So this is what makes these two people be centered on the center of the main axis, on the horizontal axis. So this is the Flexbox parent. And then for each div, I'm going to hide the before and after pseudo elements that apply this, that make this microphone and this last name and first name display. Right now we're concerned about the flex things. So I'm giving a background image for this photograph. By the way, these images are created by a machine learning algorithm. These people do not actually exist. These are photographs created by machine, by an algorithm. So these are lifelike photographs of persons that do not exist. I set up the background size and the position so that we have this image placed like in the center of the box. And I give each box 200 pixels height and 25 pixels width. So with the Flexbox, we get these items to have a width of 25% each. So we get 4 people on a single line, on a single row, and then the next ones will go to the next line. So we have a width of 25% for each box, for each flex item. We have a display flex and a flex wrap, and this pretty much makes up the Google Meet grid. Of course, we have justify content to make these two people align to the center. We could also use the default justify content, which is start flex start, so it sticks to the start of the main axis. Some background image tricks here, and of course the pseudo elements, the before and after, which create this microphone and this last name. But these are just fancy CSS stuff to make this. Study this layout and work your way with the flex properties that we learn, and start creating like grids and very simple visual grids, because CSS grid is just a different technology, and create grids of people, of posts, of news, play around with different percentages. Like right now we have 25%, but I could easily set like 50% on one of these and 50% on the others, or 50% on the first and then 25 and 25% on the other two. So we can create some really nice layouts. It has Flexbox properties with really nice illustrations. You want to take a look at the parent properties. They are right here on the left column. So everything that we cover today is here on the left column. And it also has another column for the properties that we haven't covered that affect the items, so the children. You will always have an open tab with this with this reference, with this really nice post. And as you move along and you learn Flexbox and you play around and you try to create different layouts, you'll want to have this open and remind yourself of what the properties do and what the values are, and maybe some description. So this is how we start learning Flexbox. We have this really nice guide on one window or on one tab, and we try to play around with Code Sandbox or CodePen or Live Server. Another really nice resource you must go through, it's the Screenba series of interactive screencasts for Flexbox. So this is amazing. You must go through all of these screencasts and code along. So watch a video, then write the code right inside the Screenba. I think by going through the Screenba screencasts and studying the CSS tricks webpage, and then as you try to implement some stuff using Flexbox and having these two as your guides, you will eventually get accustomed and comfortable with Flexbox. It takes time. It's difficult. There are a lot of confusing properties, as you saw, align items, align contents, but eventually you will become comfortable and you will be able to build almost all the layouts with Flexbox. I'll tell you the truth, I spend like most of my time in CSS with Flexbox, and it helps me create almost anything I need to. I'm a big fan of Flexbox, and it's really powerful.